the Shakes. Anyway, Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time to come. And just the drive here has been such a blessing. Like sharing about ourselves. But before we start, I think I would like you to begin by introducing yourself and giving a short background about your life and like what you are doing here in Korea.
So my name is Rebecca Pankratz, and I am from Washington, D.C. area of America. And the reason I came to Korea was I came to be an English teacher, and I'm working through a government program called Fulbright. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to work with North Korean refugees. So that's what I get to do. I'm in Korea, so I get to teach English at a small Christian school in Busan, and I get to work at a school where they combine both North Korean and South Korean students. It's about 20 students in the whole school, and so it's a really special place, and I've really enjoyed it a lot.
So how are you adjusting to staying here in Korea, like culture-wise, the food and everything?
Yeah, it's great. I really love the food and the people. I feel like everybody takes care of me here. I feel like it's really safe, and it's really good for me because I lose things a lot. So I really, I could talk about how much I love Korea a lot. Yeah.
And what is your favorite Korean food? Like,
it's so hard. There's so many things I love. I really like tteokbokki, but I don't know if that's my favorite. I really love samgyeopsal.
You talked a little bit about you living in India, so like if you would be interested in sharing a little bit, how you got there, and like what you were doing there also.
Yeah, sure. So my dad runs a nonprofit called Justice Ventures International, and basically it secures justice for people who are trapped in slavery in both India, China, and Nepal through partnership. And so they partner with organizations that are already in the countries, and they support them both financially or they give them training so that they can secure justice for mostly the poor who are enslaved in India, Nepal, and China. So when I was little, we moved when I was about 10 to 12 years old. We moved there when that was starting up. And so now my dad does a lot of commuting back and forth, and he does a lot of his work from like Zoom and stuff like that. But that's kind of why I lived in India, and it got me interested in Asia and different cultures, and like working with poor and stuff like that. So
So where in India did you stay? You stayed in?
Yeah, so I lived in Chennai, in southern India. So it was really great.
I think I mentioned earlier one of my brothers studied there also.
Yeah.
Another connection, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So we love India and my family, actually. Yeah, so.
And another question I usually ask is like regarding our calling. I believe God has a calling for each and every one of us. And I always ask my guests like if they have found that calling, or in the process of, or like how, if they have found it, like how did they find that calling, and like and maybe it might help someone else who is looking for that calling and purpose in life. And so maybe you can share about that a bit.
Yeah. So we were kind of talking about this in the car. I just think it's really we all have this desire that we want destiny. We want something that we can stamp our name on it. And so I just think God's mercy is He didn't give me my calling like when I felt like I needed it the most, because I put my value in my calling because I didn't think I was enough. So I think sometimes we feel rejected by God because we say, why don't you give me my calling? But then sometimes if He would give us our calling, then we would put all our value in that, and it would be about our kingdom. It wouldn't be about God's kingdom. So I think when God stripped me of that, He really showed me that, my first calling is His heart. that it's about him, and it's about always having intimacy with him. And what I mean by intimacy, because we can use that word, is it's kind of like God has been showing me that all my relationships, even my best relationships, my relationships with my parents or my friends, you know, they're just shades of what my relationship is with God. Because God promises, like, he's your best friend. So if you're like, how do I relate to God? It's like, well, how do you relate to a friend? So for me, I'm a verbal processor. So I verbal process with God. Like, that's how we do it. Like, you know, I think instead of, sometimes we try to make our relationship with God so religious. And I think, you know, when we were talking about with Korea, like, I do feel that gap sometimes. Like, I felt that sometimes before, like, God's a million miles away. But when God was showing me, like, he's like, I'm not only your master, like, I'm not only the God who's all holy, that if you saw me face to face, you'd drop dead. Like, I'm also your best friend, and I'm also your lover. Like, you know, we have that idea in Western culture of this supernatural love. It's this supernatural love where it's like, once you find that one guy or girl, it's like all problems solved. Is true love. But that's God. So it's like, I think we have that story in us. Like, what's your calling? It's like, it's something hungry in us. And so I think for me, whenever I think of calling, I'm like, okay, God, like, I have to make sure that my calling is always first your heart. Because when there's a character in the Bible, King David, and it says, it doesn't say, oh, he's King David. It says he's a king after God's own heart, or he's a man after God's own heart. That's what God called him. He didn't say, oh, King David. He's like, he's a man after my heart. And so if I ever get an identity of, I'm a pastor, or I'm a teacher, or, you know, like, God's gonna be like, you forgot your calling. So that's my calling. And then I think God will give me multiple tasks to do as I continue to seek his heart. So I feel like he's been like, just seek my heart with everything you've got, and don't worry about the things you have to do. I'll show you what to do, and I'll bring them to you. Because with me, my temptation is, I do. And then people are like, oh, good job. And I say, oh, glory to God. But actually,
I know.
I did it.
I get that.
You know? So for me, so I think we have like multiple, like, you know, little callings, right?
Yeah.
But if I miss, and it has to be a day-to-day thing, right? Like, it's kind of like when you're married, sometimes you feel far away from maybe the person you're married to. Like, you're like, we used to be so tight, but like not as much. Or like your friend, it's like you have to reconnect. And so I have to ask myself daily, like, God, like, I want to reconnect you. I want to know I want to make sure that I'm not following my kingdom. Because my kingdom is falling apart, it's wasting away, but your kingdom, ooh, like that's eternal. So anyway, I hope that answers the question. But yeah.
And so, like, that's your, like, relationship with God. That's your first calling.
Right, I guess then the task, I guess that could answer it. So I didn't know what I was doing in college, but I read this book on North Korean refugees, and it just, sometimes when you read about certain issues, it really gets to your heart. And what really got to my heart was just the hunger and the depression and the darkness and the hopelessness that so many people feel there. And so then I applied to this program because I saw that they had that opportunity to work with North Korean refugees. So God made it clear, like, after he had healed my heart, then he's like, okay, Rebecca, I'm going to trust you with more. You know, I'm going to trust you that, okay, here's a task. So I felt called to Korea. But the cool thing is, when I was in Korea, God also gave me a heart for Korean students, not just North Korean students. Because my first year in Korea, I worked with South Korean students. And I had one of my students that came up to me and said, teacher, you know that normal feeling you have when you just have depression and you don't want to live anymore? And I was like, that's not a normal feeling. Like, that shouldn't be your life. You're in middle school. But that's the way I felt when I was in middle school. So God gave me that heart where, like, I think the way I felt sometimes in when we're really wealthy countries, we put our value in what we do. And I can see that sometimes with some students in Korea. It's like, and same with me, or in America, really. is we put our value in what we do. And so it's my heart to tell people, like, it's not on what you do. Yeah, I feel like that's one of God's callings in my life. It's not about what you do. It's not about what you succeed. It's about knowing God and letting Him guide you. And everybody's different. Some people are better at math, some people are better at science. So I think that's one of the callings on my life, and just like to be faithful wherever He's called me, to use all my talents. So by the grace of God, like, He's now put me at the Christian school that I'm working at, and I think it's my calling right now is to just be the best English teacher I could be. And I think God has been putting little hints of things I'll do in the future, but I don't see the full picture yet. And so it's like chokumshik
again.
But I think it's something to do with Korea. But if I'm wrong about that, maybe He'll call me to another country. But my heart is really Asia. Like, I don't even feel like maybe just Korea, but like Asia, and he's good. But I don't know if He says no, like, it's okay, like, it's fine. So I feel like that's kind of His calling for me, and
I believe like this testimony will be such a blessing to people listening. I usually ask people to give their testimony, like how they came to know the Lord, and like when was it in their point of life that they really like surrendered completely. Mm-hmm. And so maybe your testimony might be able to help someone who is looking for that, like searching. Mm-hmm. And so if you can share a little bit about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I grew up in a Christian home, and from a young age, I don't know when I first started believing in God, but from a young age, I remember I would like walk and just talk and be like, "Hi God," and just talk and talk and talk. But in terms of hearing what He had to say to me personally, I think that happened more in middle school. So after I lived in India for 2 years, I came back, and it was really hard for me to reorient back into my school, and it was really hard for me with friendships, and I put a lot of my value in the friends I had, in what I was able to achieve, and also my family. Like, I just felt they were almost like God to me, because I put all my I think God is what we put our security in. And so for me, I put a lot of security in my family, because a lot of my friends in India would like abandon me, but my family was always there for me. I was really close to them. So when I was in middle school, I would be really depressed, like every day. And I just felt like my life was worthless, because I have been told that, a lot of what I did was what made me valuable. Not from my family, but just like that was just the message I just kind of believed, or the friends you had. And when I went to school, I didn't really have many friends, and I didn't feel like I was very successful in the things that mattered. And I always thought my sisters were better than me, or someone else, or God loved them more. And so it made me kind of loathe myself and hate myself, and like feel very depressed. And to fill that hole, that depression, I would really go to my family to tell me, they loved me, or to listen to me, or listen to my problems. But the more I would vent out my problems, nothing seemed to be resolved. And so one day, my sister, she was like reading her Bible and praying and spending time with God. And I went to her and I told her, spend time with me, hang out with me, because I'm lonely, because I have this hole and this void that is never fed. And she was like, Becky, like, why don't you go read the Bible? And I believed in God, and I was a Christian, but I never really read the Bible, because I just thought it was really boring, and it just seemed like a textbook. But at that point, I was really desperate, and so I just started trying to read parts of the Bible, and every day I would cry out to God to heal me for like a year. And as they say in Korea, chokumshik. Little by little, like God started to heal my heart, and he still was working through high school and middle school, healing my heart and showing me. He took away different things to show me my value was not in those things. So for me, I feel like our growth with God is always progressive, and he had to take away a lot of those things that I put in my value to show me that actually I am enough because God made me and he said I'm enough. And it's not how many friends I have. He took a lot of friends away. I was like, why? Why? And I was so lonely. But I'm so grateful, because in those lonely points is when I learned how to pray so much more, because God was the only one who was there for me. I felt like there were other people that were there for me, but he's the only one who really could make a difference. And so I just will be honest, sometimes I just sit down and just cry and say, God, this happened and this happened and this happened and this. You know, I'm a verbal processor, so I just did that with God instead of people. It helped a lot more. And so he just continuously healed my heart. And even as a Christian, I can put my value in my ministry. And so I thought, God, why aren't you helping me be more successful to tell people about God? But I felt like he even took that away. And so I couldn't put my value in how successful I was. And so he kept showing me over and over again. And when he finally got me to the point where he said, I just like you because I made you, and I made you before the beginning of the earth. I made every part of you, that I felt so free that I have to always remind myself it's not what I do, it's who I am, it's what God says I am, and that gives me freedom and joy.
Wow, that's so amazing.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, God is amazing. Yeah.
So at the beginning you were saying like as a kid you would talk to God, you know, like you had this open relationship. One thing I noticed about like in Korean culture, Asian culture, I guess, we have this levels, right? Especially someone who's older. We don't have that openness that we feel, you know, like the Western people have. I think they connect easier with God because they have like they can talk to them as friends, you know, like even the age difference doesn't matter. But with the Asian culture, I think that is a hindrance that we suffer with.
Yeah.
And so even God, like we are like very careful, you know, like when we approach him, and like they have that distance, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's just amazing, like how you can just connect with God. And also another part, like you were saying, like you lost all your friends, right? Like growing up in like multiple countries, you know, traveling and all. I think we experience that a lot.
Yeah.
Like we meet them for a short period of time, and they're gone, and then you feel very lonely and empty, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one part. Like it's good, at the same time, it's not very good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was interesting. But,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah. So like for the last like final parting words, I guess, like if you had something you could, you know, leave to the listeners, like anything that's, you know, can be a blessing to them.
Oh yes. No matter who you are infinitely valuable and infinitely beautiful because God made you. That's not prideful to say, because God made you. So we shouldn't take pride. We're like, when we say, oh, I'm ugly, or I can't do anything, you're really just putting God down. You're saying, oh, God can't do anything. But who gave you the ability to speak? Who gave you the ability to talk? God. So if you say you can't do it, then you're telling that God can't do it through you, and he can do it. He uses through everyone. But I want to encourage you, if you don't know what your calling is, seek first the heart of God, because God says, seek first my kingdom, and all these things will be added to you. And that's the best way. It's like God is not unloving. He's not unjust. He's obsessed with you. It says like his thoughts for you, like thousands, like sand on the seashore. But it's the best for you if you seek God's heart first, because say you were to get your calling first, that might destroy you. Like, you know, it might destroy you, because as soon as Saul lost in the Bible, when Saul lost the heart of God, it destroyed him, because he was so terrified of losing his ministry, of losing his kingship. And that caused him to lose, you know, his heart and just lose so many areas. So instead of being like, why does God hate me? Why does he talk to other people? That's a lie, first of all, if that's what you're dealing with. That's a lie, first of all, from the enemy. Second of all, God loves you and he uses all things for your good. And I just think, look at your life through the Bible. Don't look at it through what you see. So my final words would be: seek the heart of God as your first calling, and all things will be added to you.
It's just amazing in the kingdom of God. Like it is when we let go of things that we are blessed with more.
Yeah.
It's that the harder we hold on to the like the little we have, that we're not
Right.
able to receive the greater like blessing that He has in store for us.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you
And
so
I hope
much.
to be working with you in the future also.
Yeah. Sounds great.